live with my buddy Keith from Lancaster, PA. I'm streaming from Sydney, Australia. If you guys are tuning in and you're from the YouTube channel here, I say thank you. If you come from our Facebook group, Boxing News Today, that's where the origin of this project started from with Keith and I. We say subscribe to this YouTube channel, and thanks for following us. We had a huge weekend in boxing. There's a lot to cover. This is episode 2 of This Week in Boxing. Keith, there was a lot of stuff to go through today.
Amazing boxing weekend. I tell you what, there are 2 different cards, one DAZN and the ESPN Top Rank card. But man, I tell you what, it was a great weekend for boxing fans.
Yeah, we got to start with Devin Haney, Regis Prograis. Devin Haney, Regis Prograis. This fight was, before the fight started, we did some stuff on our Facebook group. We did a competition. We asked everybody what they thought of the 4 fights. And you and I did a segment on episode 1 of how this fight was going to play down. So if you go to the end of episode 1 of this show, you could hear you talk about how you would see it, decision. Devin was going to take control of the fight, and it played out exactly how you predicted.
Yeah.
Maybe just not. We didn't think Devin would look that good, though.
I'll tell you what, it was a performance of his career so far for Devin. I'll tell you what, I've been critical of Devin for a while, and the Lomachenko fight was a close one. That could have, for me, that was a very close fight. It could have won. I thought maybe a draw would have been better and a rematch to come, but that's nor here nor there. But he definitely showed that going to 140 is the best version of Devin Haney so far that we've seen. And that performance that he put on with Regis was, pretty much perfect. I can't really say anything else other than that was perfect.
When you see, like I could attest to literally everything you said. I can't say that I was the biggest Devin Haney fan going into this fight, but I'm a fan of what have you done for me lately. I'm a fan of human performance and obviously the sweet science. And what Devin did, being able to neutralize, when you look at the tools and the skill sets that each fighter had going into that fight, Devin, he had to neutralize, a few less tools because he's way more skilled and talented than Regis. Regis is a bit older, flat-footed. He just made Regis look very average. And when we start thinking about all-time greats, kind of a weird hypocrisy about boxers is that the more they make their opponent look average, the people who hate on them will come out and say, well, he was over the hill, or Regis had no feet, or his resume was shit. And it's almost like you become a victim of your greatness. And I'm not saying Dev is great yet, but this is exactly what Bud Crawford went through his whole career up until even what he did to EJ. EJ was in the car wreck. He had miles on him. It's just something that boxers have to go through, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's almost in any sport. If the guys that have a tendency to make it look so easy, when that happens, critics want to look and say and look for excuses on the other end. Instead of giving them their flowers and their props and being like, hey, that was a great performance, they start looking at the negative on the other side because he made it look so easy. And there's a couple of things that I want to touch on that I don't think people give enough credit to. And that's, for one, Bill Haney needs to be taken serious as a trainer and a coach. The way he's brought up his son, it's just amazing. You talk about a game plan that they stuck to, and it's pretty much been perfect all along. And the one thing that I respected more and more about the Haney team is they really want the best fights. They're not just, talking about it. Like, I like Gervonta Davis, but if there's one thing that, his career has been so carefully chosen out. He's 29, almost 30 years old now. And the one thing I'll say about Devin is he believes in himself. And I'm sold with this performance. And there's another point is I saw 2 fighters after fighting Lomachenko really take their fighting style and ability to the next level. Teofimo took his game to another level after fighting Lomachenko, and he used that against Josh Taylor. And after the fight with Haney and Lomachenko, it just made everything just seem so easy for him against Regis. They're 2 different type of fighters, but it just seems like if you could, go against Lomachenko and really figure him out, a lot of other guys are very basic compared to that. And I just think that It was almost like when Canelo fought Floyd, where Canelo lost, but he learned and got so much better from that matchup that it was almost worth taking that loss to learn that, boxing lesson that he went on with.
I totally agree on what you said about Devin Haney's pops, Bill Haney. 100%. When is the time going to come where he gets thrown in the conversation for what he's done? Not just with Devin, but he coaches other fighters as well. He marketed that fight. He was on the road with Devin. He's with his son every step of the way. We know about his faith. Their faith is strong together. That's another bond, father son. It's not just a business. They're trying to create legacy. And when you have cohesiveness like that is blood related, I mean, the sky is the limit. And I love the rub that you're talking about, that championship rub. You could see this when Michael Jordan was early in his career in basketball. He was going up against the Pistons and he kept losing. And it's, all of a sudden he broke through against Cleveland. I'm dating myself. When he finally won a series, 1989, Richfield
Yes.
Coliseum, he hits that shot in Cleveland in game 5. And it was all those losses, all those series that he lost against the bad boys Detroit teams. And you see it in boxing. The Canelo example, perfect example of this. And obviously, anybody who shares the ring with Lomachenko for an extended period of time and they have a decent fight IQ. We know Lopez has a high fight IQ, and we know Devin Haney. One of my favorite things about the kid is how intelligent he is in there. They're going to take something with him. Not all fighters are able to do that because whether it's ego or they talk about, usually you see the heavyweights, they're going to have a style, they're going to pull forward, knockout artists. But when you have the lighter weights who are relying on maneuverability, tricks, feints, traps, stuff like that, and they get to share the space with someone like Loma. I mean, that Josh Taylor fight, like you said, Teo looked great. After he had a couple lackluster performances, it wasn't back to back. He had to figure
Yep.
out who he was as a man, brought that into the ring, and then Devin Haney. I mean, the longer these careers go, this is another beautiful part about boxing is us people who are fans, commentators are able to look at hindsight performances and be like, oh yeah, they're piecing it together. And anybody who's writing Devin off already as a 25-year-old who doesn't have power, will he ever be a one punch knockout artist? No, but he doesn't have to be. That doesn't mean he doesn't have power. I was getting into this in a couple of the groups online after the fight, is that power doesn't mean just one punch knockout power. Power means that you're skilled,
Absolutely.
you're precise enough, and you're accurate. His accuracy is high level to where he could throw a shot, and that's strong enough to deter his opponent from wanting to take those risks again, and that'll protect them the whole fight. And we saw this with Regis.
Absolutely. With round 3 being the example of Devin showed he'll never be a one punch knockout power type of guy, but he answered the question that I needed to be answered for me to be sold on him. And that was him going up in weight class. And is he able to keep the guys off of him? Is his power enough for them to respect him?
That's
And
right.
he's got enough power that he showed in the 3rd round there that if you fall asleep on him or you get off balance or take a wrong step, he's got enough crack in him that he can put you down. And he
Regis felt
totally
that.
took he totally took Regis out of that fight after that 3rd round when he got his respect. And it was almost reminded me of now back when Floyd fought Arturo Gatti, he stopped him in the 6th round, but
Complete
it almost
demolition.
reminded me of that performance where he just pop shotted him and just completely beat him down. And I kind of was getting a little bit of deja vu watching. That's what it kind of reminded me of that
And
fight with
yeah,
Arturo Gatti and Floyd. That's how much he picked him apart.
but the dog in Arturo is what allowed Floyd to look even more exceptional, and Regis didn't want to go that route. There's a decision.
Absolutely.
A lot of you guys who are watching this who have never been into a fight or never boxed, guys, there's a decision that fighters have to make in a fight if they're down on the cards and it's not going their way. The decision is either because they're all high level problem solvers. They could get through 12 rounds usually, and get their ass beat, but they won't go unconscious. Arturo never did that. Arturo would rather go out on a sword. And
Yeah.
when you have a young, fresh, clean Floyd Mayweather, it's that mindset Arturo brought into that fight made Floyd look even greater. And some of us, I don't ever want to see anyone go out cold. And it was hard for me as a younger guy cheering for Arturo in that fight, watching him get beat up. But the anti fan would say Regis should have done that. But it's just not the sport we watch. And the sport has changed. I don't know if there's many guys who would do that, who would go out on their sword and just go for it when the risk versus reward is so small. I mean, does Regis goes for the knockout and gets knocked out, what are the chances of him actually catching Devin versus him going out cold? Probably very slim. I want to ask you before we move on, what's next for Devin?
I would love to see, in a perfect world, I would love to see Devin and Teofimo match up, but I just don't
Is it at
know
40?
if that would.
If we're playing fortune teller, does Dev take it? Is his next fight at 40, or is he playing this leapfrog thing and he wants to go up to 47 right away?
It's really hard to tell because it's the Haney team really sounds like they want the biggest fights.
Yes.
So, and I would say from a promotional standpoint, if the easiest fight would probably be the co-main event winner, Liam Paro, at 140 versus Devin, because they're both with Matchroom and DAZN. And Paro, had a good outing and looked, very impressive and really shocked me on that fight. That would be one that's be easy to be made. The Teofimo fight is the one that I think boxing needs to see right now at 140. I would push for Devin to stay. There's way too much talent at 140 right now for him to rush and go up to 147. I just think that he should really stay at 140 and really try to go undisputed and conquer this division if he really thinks that he is that guy.
It was interesting going into the Liam Paro Montana Love fight. We were talking about the odds. The odds makers down here in Australia had Liam as the favorite, and the odds makers in Vegas had Montana as the favorite. And maybe because I've seen Liam's career down here in Sydney, if you're a boxing fan, you've heard about the stories of him sparring people like Shakur Stevenson and getting that rub. You can get that rub in sparring as well. It doesn't have to be under the big lights. A lot of the Aussie fighters who are succeeding, excluding Tim, because Tim stays home and he'll do his camps in Thailand. But Kambosos with Pacquiao and Liam Paro with Shakur and other guys. That fight, I had Paro winning that fight. I picked Paro to win that fight, and I think that's an example. Montana just didn't have the defense, or after the first few rounds, Liam knew he didn't have the power to hurt him. So Liam at that point, it's like dropping meat into a blender because Paro doesn't look that sort of scary on paper, but he could throw, and his style, he's coming at you. When he sees the smallest little bit that you're either fading a bit or backing up or not want to fight, he wants to fight you, and he's skilled enough to get engaged in that brawl. And him versus Haney, those are two styles, man. That excites me. We'll see what happens with that, but I'd love to see that fight first. You would think that the Haney's, and the thing about the Aussie fighters, I know that I've heard Bill talk about, he's in the media. You want to be entertained, guys. Pay attention to boxing. A couple weeks after Devin Haney fight, just Google search Bill Haney. He's talking about he wants Conor Benn, Boots Ennis. He's saying, it's exciting. But realistically, I think you're right. Probably 140 for at least a few fights.
I would think so. I just don't see the reason to jump up to 147 when 140 is where the best talent. 140 is the best division in boxing right now. So for him to jump out of it would make no sense to me.
It's stacked, and I think that he's getting. You said he wants to fight everyone. He's only going to get more confident as well. The thing that us fans, we don't really see a lot is like the benefit and the positive mental aspects it plays on a fighter doing fight week, having all the cameras on you, and then winning, and then doing your post fight, having all the cameras on you, and all that stuff helps play into the fact of a fighter's ego and a fighter's mentality of, oh, I want more of this. How do I turn the dial up more and more? And that's another kudos to Bill, because it seems like every time Dev fights, they're always taking steps forward. You can't, sometimes when guys fight and they win, it's an ugly win. It might not always be a step forward with the fans and media. And that, at 25, the sky's really the limit. I think he's skilled, talented, athletic enough that where's he going to be overmatched at too much at 40? I mean, there's a lot of close fights for him, but to say that somebody at 140 would totally wash Devin Haney, I don't know, man. I think he'd put up anybody at 140. I know you want that Matias fight.
Yeah, I'd like to see. There's quite a few. I think Teofimo is probably athletically and skill wise probably the best one to match up, going skill for skill with Devin. I'll tell you a
I'd love to see that
sleeper,
fight week. I'd love to see
a
Bill
sleeper, and
and,
that's
and, and Tio's dad go at it.
uh, I mean, it'll be just a total pay-per-view show. You can make the
Oh,
press conference pay-per-view.
for
It's going to be
100%.
a show. But I'll tell you, a sleeper in that division is Richardson Hitchens. He is
Hitchens?
he can really crack, and he's an athletic, twitchy, fast twitchy type of fighter. I like him. There's just so many good fights to be made at 140, but it all comes down to are the Haneys, are they trying to make the biggest fights, or what's their game plan? Because they pretty much can call their own shots right now. I have a note here that I also wanted to make sure I commented. Uh, in this fight with Regis and Haney, he set a record for the least amount of punches landed, but with
35?
38 punches.
38. That's
38 was the final, I think, tally. 38 punches landed in a 12-round fight. Like
that,
that's
it,
pretty
it
against a world champion. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
exactly. And they're gonna talk about, oh, it was Regis. Nobody's gonna talk about how skilled Devin was for that to happen. And if you look at Devin's resume, his last 13 fights, whether they were world title fights or regional title, his last 13 fights have all been title fights. So
Yeah.
he's bred for this. He's made for the big time. Um, Before the weekend happened, you sent me some links about some like cards that were flying under the radar. I mean, you know about regional cards, you know about cards that are happening in the South, and I want to give a special shout out. I like using the boxing group on Facebook, Boxing News Today, as kind of a litmus test. We have over 100,000 people there, and we could post something in there, and based on the reaction, how many shares, it'll tell me a little bit about either the fighter or the fight. And when Jared Hurt fought this weekend and he won, and we posted that in the group, it got enormous response. And I just want to give a shout out to Jared Hurd getting a victory. It seems like he's his mind is in the right place and wants to make another run.
Yeah, he's got a new division at 160, and that's not flooded with a whole lot of talent. And I would like to see him, he looks like he's rejuvenated, refreshed. He took some time off, and he was in some wars, so he definitely could benefit from taking that time off. And I think, depending on what goes on with Canelo and who he picks to fight next, a good fight right now would be a Jamal Charlo versus uh,
Hurd.
yeah, Hurd at 160. I'd like to see Jamal and Hurd at 160.
And that would sell. And I mean, both have a good resume. The styles are pretty similar. We'll see if that happens. There's so many good fights. We just hopefully conversations like this will play its small little minuscule part to maybe get some the ball rolling in some sort of way. How about the Shocker down in Florida? I had just did a video about the classy Olympian Robeisy, and dude, nobody could have expected that. 11-1 underdog, and he lost.
I'll tell you what, I couldn't believe it. There was little known about this Rafael Espinoza going into it. The guy, he only had 11 amateur fights fighting against a guy who had over 400 amateur fights, 2 gold medals, and who is now a 126-pound champion. Robeisy, I really just thought Robeisy Ramirez was the cream of the crop in that division. But I'll tell you what, a new star was born on Saturday down in Pembroke Pines, Florida. 6'1". Espinoza he reminds me of almost a Fundora with his, height at such a low weight class. I mean, he's going to be taller than any opponent. But there's another thing on that fight that really you never give credit to these two types. The refs and the judges both got that. I give them an A+ on that fight.
For letting it go, for not stopping
Espinoza
it.
was dropped. He was dropped in the 5th round, and when he got back up, he actually tumbled forward and fell into the ropes. Where I've seen a lot of referees call fights off immediately when they see that second fall down or stumble, and
Yep.
he allowed Espinoza to gather himself and get himself together and fight on. And the judges really got it right
And
also
he
at the
dropped
end
he dropped Robeisy with
in the
like a
12th.
minute left.
Yes, it
That's
was. I
wild.
mean, unbelievable performance. I mean, his grit, his toughness. Espinosa came. Someone forgot to tell him that he was the underdog because he came with 100% expectations on winning that fight and that performance. He's going to be a name to stay for a while. He's going to be a tough guy to beat at 126. I'd love to see him go up to 130 and fight Navarrete.
Yeah,
I
he's
think
always a
that would be a war.
yeah, Navarrete, he's coming up. He didn't look that great his last fight.
No.
Wasn't that and then you take the fight against Liam Wilson, the Aussie. Liam dropped him early, and then he ended up finishing him in the ninth. There was controversy there. The good thing about Navarrete, normally every time he fights, he brings it. But you think that the young kid Espinosa is already ready for Navarrete?
If he was able to keep up with the skill set and abilities of Robeisy Ramirez with how good he is as a boxer and the chin that he showed, I would say yes. And he's a 10-year pro. So this is his 10th year. He's had a very small amateur career, but he's been in the game for 10 years at the pro level. And I definitely do think that he's ready for the top dogs at 126 or 130. I do, especially with that height advantage at 6'1",
He uses it
and he's
too.
got a chin and he can crack.
Yeah, he's a fun fighter. Another fun fighter on that card is a 21-year-old Puerto Rican upstart, Xander Zayas. He won again, his third victory in 6 months. Beautiful body shot. And breaking news just about an hour ago, already signed to fight again. He's fighting in February at the Hulu Theater, Madison Square Garden, against former Brazilian champion Patrick Teixeira. And that is a step up. Teixeira has had some ups and downs. He has won his last two by knockout, but Xander is an exciting prospect, and that it just shows how stacked that ESPN Plus card was.
Yeah, Top Rank is really doing a great job with bringing Xander along, and I just think that this will be another good gradual step up for him and opponent. And he's
You
just
remember?
answered
Yeah.
the bell at every test. He's the real deal. He's Puerto Ricans, in my opinion. Matias is kind of bringing his name into being superstar status if he has a couple more big wins. But Xander Zayas is the future of Puerto Rican boxing.
Teixeira is the kid who stopped Carlos Davis, and
Yes.
and Davis is. I mean, he's not really being called out by that many people. So this is
No,
a step.
he's a feared fighter.
Yeah, and this is a step up. Something I like watching the my favorite part about boxing are like the small little details that people might not pick up. But in Xander's post fight in the ring, he spoke English, and so this is showing you this kid is learning the language. And that's one of the things we spoke about in our first episode is how to navigate the waters of fighters who aren't bilingual and still help them grow into becoming international stars. We've watched Canelo learn both languages, and to hear Xander called out to Sheriff for them to get that fight in Feb. I mean, he's guns blazing. He wants to become a star.
Yeah, his activity level is up there with the best of them too. I mean, he's one of the most active fighters right now. So it's really fun to find guys at that stage of their career that just are active and want to get in there as much as possible. Top Rank has quite a few guys that are like Tiger Johnson, Shushu Carrington, and a few others that Torres Jr. that are very active. They're fighting like 5, 6 times a year, and it's Top Rank's got a good young stable over there, and they keep them busy.
Yeah, it looks like it probably another year or so where they're going to be back, challenging the biggest fights. Those fighters are just maturing. They're a young
Yeah.
stable. Now we got talk. I know the Ring Magazine. There's a couple topics here all combined into one. Ring Magazine today released their pound for pound top 10, but also Fighter of the Year is a conversation we've been having. It's one that's important to have this time of year every year, and I wanted to touch base on Fighter of the Year in your opinion. I know there's when we mentioned it in the group, people either say, Inoue. There's a lot of Monster fans he's preparing for a huge fight. I meing, that's going to be fireworks. And then
Yes.
You got your Bud Crawford fans. And I'm just going to leave this one with you. Maybe a little breakdown in your opinion, do not like the most educated way possible. And I know you won't do it sort of opinionated or divisive, but if you had to give your votes for Fighter of the Year, which way would you go?
It's really tough this year because Crawford really stepped up and I think took over pound for pound number one, which is going to make a lot of people want to say Crawford for Fighter of the Year. However, it's really hard to go against and say that anyone had a better year than David Benavidez, beating
Whoa!
Caleb
Oh, you threw
Plant,
me a
and
curveball.
Boo Boo Andrade. So Boo Boo Andrade. So beating those two guys, I gave this a lot of thought, and I couldn't argue if Crawford got it because the guy is at the top of the game and just showed that, he's an amazing talent and generational talent. But I think that the best year, I would have to give the best two wins to David Benavidez. And you have Inoue there as well as Devin Haney there too. But the thing that hurts Devin, I believe, is the questionable decision against Lomachenko really is going to hurt him when he's going up against two guys with Crawford who won so easily, and Benavidez who stopped both Plant and Andrade.
So my thing, let me play devil's advocate here with Bud first. So he fought last year in December on a fight that, I think that was the David Evanesian fight. Not many people even remember that fight. He got paid $10 million for that fight, and Evanesian was coming off of a fight against my boy, pretty boy Josh Kelly. He gave Josh Kelly his first loss. One of my favorite styles in pro boxing, and you remember there was this promotion that came out of nowhere. They promoted the fight. They were supposed to be real big, and they give Bud $10 million to fight Evanesian, and then he doesn't fight again until July 29th. And so we're talking fighter of the year. He fought once, right? Fight of the year, fighter of the year. Now that would be my argument against Bud. He only had one fight. Okay,
Yeah.
my argument for Bud is when you take the two wins of Benavidez, Plant, and Boo Boo, and then you take, let's say 10 years from now, we look at Haney's win against Loma. It's still a victory. It's never going to be a loss. Loma
Yep.
victory, and then what he did against Regis. Now, those four fights combined, Loma, Regis, Plant, Benavidez, I got to ask myself, do any of those fights, did any of those fights move the needle culturally? Like the sport of boxing, did they move the needle as much as the EJ Bud fight? And I can't say they did. And what that fight did, everybody was talking about, everybody was tuning in. Eminem got out of his, isolated mansion to actually walk Crawford out. Bud was appearing on all of the national syndicate media shows. So was Errol. The media was amazing. And that's why I would give my fight of the year to Bud, because who meant the most in that 365 days? Who meant the most for the sport? And you got to look at that, I think, when considering. And I think if Bud wins fighter of the year, that I would be okay with that.
I could not argue for 1 minute if they gave Bud, but there's a difference to me between event of the year, which I would give to Crawford for the Errol Spence and Crawford fight. But as far as fighter of the year, fighter, I mean, that's plural. I mean, he had more than, you know what I mean? I just look at it like,
Yeah.
But either way, I will never argue if Crawford is deserving. It would be a crime if Crawford doesn't get fighter of the year in one of these years, So I would have to say with either, it's really tough. It's usually not that tough of a call, but you've had really, some standout years for guys. So I would have to say I wouldn't be upset if it was Benavidez, if it was Crawford, or even Haney. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I lean more towards Benavidez and Crawford right now, and being that Devin's got, he's young yet, and he's got plenty of time. That if he doesn't get it, no big deal. Same with Benavidez, but yeah, I'd say those Crawford and Benavidez are my top two. I can't disagree with you at all because the fight to make was Spence versus Crawford, and he just blew him out of the water. So that performance was, by all means, worthy of praise and to get fighter of the year.
So I want to read to you. Ring Magazine released their, top 10 lists. Everybody, it's more fun than anything. Some people take it really seriously. Some people get offended. Top 10. Number 10, they have Lomachenko. 9, Teofimo. 8, Tank. 7, Devin. EJ at 6. 5 is Bivol. 4 is Canelo. 3 is Usyk. 2 is Inoue. And 1 is Bud. Do you have any problems with that list?
I don't have a problem. I think they got it right with the 10 that they selected. I might switch some around. I think that I think Teofimo should be above Tank just for the step up fights that he beat Taylor and Lomachenko. His resume has 2 much better wins than any win that Gervonta has. I think Gervonta belongs on the top 10, but I think that Teofimo belongs above him. Even with the Cambosis, loss, I still had Tiafimo, in
which
my
was a
opinion,
split.
as above
I
him.
mean, which was a split decision loss too. It's not like he got, he was winning those later rounds. He did get dropped. He kind of was caught off guard. Um, what's your take on everything we just said about Benavidez not being on the top 10?
You know what? I didn't even think about that. I would personally put him.
I would take Tank Davis off. This will be controversial. Look, I'm an old school sort of type of fighter. I want to cheer for guys who want to fight the best. I always think about it, if I
Yeah.
had a nephew or a son in the room, would I want that nephew or son to cheer for this certain guy? And for a guy to blatantly say that he doesn't care about fighting the best, he just wants to make money, I can't cheer for that guy. And David Benavidez, I mean, I would remove Tank Davis. I'd put Benavidez on that list 100%. That's it. I like Errol still being there. That goes to show you the writers. You can't just somebody who is that highly talented with that sort of career trajectory takes that beating. I like how they just didn't throw him away. They're obviously they believe in second chances, and they're going to see what this rematch looks like. So I don't mind EJ being number 6 either, but I would take Tank off. What have you done, man?
I agree with that, with what you're saying there. I almost, if there was, now that you say that, I think that I would almost be more quick to take Spence off, leave Tank on, and bring Benavidez in,
I
just
can see.
because of how bad he got beat, because it
Yeah.
wasn't even competitive. The biggest fight of his career, he laid an egg and really, I mean, he got just beat to a pulp. I would honestly have to say that would be worthy of taking him off the top 10 and leaving, put Benavidez on there, leave Tank there, and I would say Spence needs to fight his way back onto that list.
How about the state of the heavyweight division with a basically cruiserweight, a kid that Sean Porter beat in the amateurs, Usyk,
Who's
who
sick?
is heavyweight now, the only one representing the list. There was a time where this list was all heavyweights.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
uh,
it's it's hard. It's hard for me also. Now that you say it, it's also hard to keep Tyson Fury off of it. But that Ngannou performance really just showed, is where is he at right now? Is he putting it in cruise control, and is he
yeah,
on a quick descend like many heavyweights do?
yeah.
Because I actually leave him off of that list, because there is no way that Ngannou, a UFC fighter, never fighting pro fight in boxing, should have ever given him that type of tough challenge. So if you would, I would keep Tyson Fury off of that list because of that performance. That was really just suspect, and he may be declining to the point where he's not a top 10 guy anymore.
Would you be able, for the sake of a terrible analogy, gun to the head, would you be able to remove anyone and replace them with better beef?
Uh, I just think Beterbiev's resume is questionable. I mean, I just think, I mean, he's definitely, I mean, he's a fun guy to watch. He's a fan friendly style. He's knocked out like everybody. Uh, I still, I can't put him, I can't put him over the skill level of Tank, and that would be the guy. Tank is the one that I would kind of have to, if I had to remove one out of that list, and I want to see Beterbiev fight Bivol, and I'd like to see him fight either Benavidez or Canelo. I just think Beterbiev needs a big win on his resume, a big known champion to really put him. His career has really flown under the radar kind of quietly. There hasn't been a ton of talent at 175, and he's just been stuck there and staying at 175 his entire career. So I think him and Bivol need to really line up and
All right,
fight.
and to put a bow on this pound for pound talk in Rings top 10, maybe name your honorable mention. Maybe name 5 younger fighters this time next year that have an opportunity to be on this list that people might not know about.
Uh, I might need a second to think of. So
Like, do you
you're
think
talking about
Shakur?
guys
What does
guys
Shakur
that are right
Stevens do?
there.
What does Shakur have to do to be on this list? You know what I mean?
Shakur needs to fight either someone like a Lomachenko or a Tank. If Tank stays at 135, I'd like to see that matchup. I mean, he's right there. I mean, skill wise, it's it's really tough with this because it's like you got to throw a lot of factors in. You got to throw skills in. You got to go throw resume, and you can't. It's some of these young guys. He's only what 25 years old, so their resumes aren't bad for being only 25 years. So you just got to let things kind of play out a little bit
How
and
about Tim Zoo?
see. I think Tim Zoo needs to, if he would beat Charlo, I would say put him on. If he would beat Jermel Charlo, that would be a definite reason to put him in the top 10.
He's because we posted this in the group, those were some names that kept popping up: Zoo, Better Beeve, and I think a lot of people were asking where Benavidez was. So if I had to say
Benavidez needs to be there.
yeah, so if I had to say three guys that would be close that you could maybe shuffle out a couple here and there, I would probably agree with those three as well. Now we talk about the matchmaker segment, and I don't want to put you on the spot. We got a lot of conversation coming out of the woodwork with Canelo's camp, with Al Heyman. We have a lot of maybe there it people are so on their seats about who's Canelo going to fight next. They're making articles about potential his next three opponents, but I want to know who he's going to fight next. In a perfect world, if you had the power, who are you matching Canelo Alvarez up with next?
100% David Benavidez.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. May or September. Everybody's saying that this fight is going to happen, but they're saying Canelo's camp wants Benavidez to go through, a fight in May, because Canelo's talking about fighting someone else in May. Like if Munguia walks through Ryder, I heard the rumor and he's supposed to, but Ryder's tough. I mean, Ryder got a chin on him, and Munguia's there to get hit. But I heard rumors that they want that Munguia Canelo fight in May, and then Canelo will fight Benavidez in September. But I don't see Benavidez being on the shelf till September waiting for that fight. So realistically, then, who do you think Benavidez takes next?
I think if he doesn't get Canelo, I could see him actually going up to 175 and try to challenge Bivol.
See, that's something no one's talking about. That I would pay for that fight. That's an exciting fight for
Because I
both guys.
don't think he's interested in fighting Morrell, who's another good talent at 168. I just don't think that the pros and cons. He wants a champion.
Yeah, Morrell fights Sega Beksa, I think.
Becca. Yeah, Becca this weekend.
The last ever Showtime show.
Yes.
So Morrell's camp, he's what, 9? I think he's had 9 pro fights.
He's 9-0.
And they're trying to position him as like the shadow for Benavidez, but Benavidez is like, hey man, I put these miles in. You got to put some more work in before. And that's another part that the fans need to understand. There is some truth to that. As a fighter, you go through some wars, you go through some like tunnels, and you see somebody come on to the stage, and you think that they might be skipping some steps here, and you're gonna say what's on your mind. You're like, wait, you have only 9 pro fights. Fight 10 more times, and we'll talk.
Absolutely, and it also there's a huge part of that too. Is every time you step in that ring, you leave a little bit lesser of a version than you were. So skipping those steps is a big deal, not only for your name, for your resume, but also for the wear and tear that you go through. So, and David Benavidez has been a champion since he was 19 years old, got suspended and lost his belt, since then, but he was a champ since 19. I think that for Morrell to be a guy that he'd want to fight, he's got to make it worth it for him. So if he doesn't get Canelo, I could really see him going up to 175 and trying to beat a guy that Canelo couldn't and make a statement.
That's an exciting fight. And on that note, I have one more note in our list for the show: 140s and 135s. Is there anything that comes to mind? It's basically just we wanted to end it on like a highlight of those two divisions and maybe some of the live talent that some of the fans could keep an eye on for in upcoming fights.
For the 140 division, you just talking about the different talent that's in the division?
That's right.
Yeah, I would have to say you have Tiafimo, Devin Haney, Matias. Paro just put himself in the sweepstakes. You have Rolly Romero, who has a belt, who I don't think skill level is on the same level as those guys, but he's got a belt, so he's going to be in the picture. Uh, who are some other 140 guys that are I'm trying to think of?
Well, the thing is, there's always after fights that were won or lost. The current conversation right now is with Regis. Regis feels that he could fight. He wants to fight Rolly, and he he thinks that he can win that fight. I don't know if anybody will want to pay to see that fight. I just think you said the big four. Matias, Tio, Haney, and before one more before Paro's name was thrown in the list. What do you think Tank ever comes up to 40?
It just sounds recently like he isn't interested in coming because he was talking about having Devin come down to 135 if they wanted to fight. He doesn't sound too interested in going to 140 right now, even though he did go up to 140 to fight Mario Barrios and performed well. And Barrios is a bigger fighter than Haney, but Tank's a hard guy to predict on what he's going to do. And it sounds a lot like they're talking about the Pitbull rematch, which I'm not interested in that at all. I
Yeah,
think if Tank stays at 135, he needs to fight either a Lomachenko or Shakur Stevenson.
yeah. Isaac Cruz did not look good his last fight, and it's not like it's not a fight I'd like to see. Garcia was the fourth of the 40s that we were talking about. Kit Ryan, basically on you know he's put getting the victory. He put himself right back into the sweepstakes of another big fight.
I
So
think I think a
there's a lot of
great fight
matchups.
for Ryan would be I think Ryan and Rolly would be a great fight at this point.
I would watch
And
it.
see if Ryan can go ahead and get that belt and be, put himself into the conversation. Because right now he's the only one on that list that doesn't have a belt. I would like to see him, though. It would be a pay per view. It'd be a big sell for him and Rolly to go at it at 140. And that way Ryan could finally have a chance of being a world champion. And then I'd like to see, that division play out. But yeah, Tiafimo, Devin Haney, Matias, Ryan Garcia, and Rolly Romero. You have Paro that's right there. You have Barboza who's there, Richardson Hitchens. So, like we had talked about earlier a couple days ago, you had made that bracket style like the World Series of Boxing, Super Series, like they did at 168 with Andre Ward back in the day. That would be such a great thing for this 140 flooded division of talent to have them do a tournament style like that. Will they ever? I doubt it,
We need
but
this.
it would
We
be
need that
great to
Saudi
see.
money. We need that Saudi money to drop somebody to drop some money on it. Go to Dubai and do it.
Yeah, that
Uh,
would be the place to do it.
the heavyweights are getting ready. Um, One fight that we haven't spoken about. We know that this weekend, guys. We're wrapping this up in the next couple minutes. But some fights this weekend. We talked about David Morrell Jr. and then the Rodriguez and Edwards fight as well. Some of the lighter guys are going to get to showcase their talents, and they both got popped. That's going to be a exciting matchup. It's for the
That's
title,
going to
world
be a
championship.
war.
Yeah, world
That's going to
championship.
be that's going to be a great fight to watch. I honestly haven't seen a whole lot of Sonny Edwards fight. I've seen highlights of his. I'm really impressed with Jesse Ben Rodriguez. I think that he's a really good young champion that because he's on the lighter weight class doesn't get probably as much attention and credit as he should. But I'm excited to see how he performs this weekend. I mean, it was really impressive to see him beat the guy that beat Chocolatito,
Yeah, that was a
Rung
great
Rung
fight.
V-side.
Rugby
He
side.
he beat him. Yeah, that was a very respectable win for a young fighter like that. So that was impressive of him. So I'm excited to see that matchup.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. This was episode 2 of This Week in Boxing. If you're not subscribed to this channel, it's Johnny Says on YouTube. Like and share this, and then go over to Facebook, follow Keith and I. Boxing News Today. You got Keith, Lancaster, Pennsylvania's finest. I'm coming here from Sydney, Australia. We appreciate you guys. See ya.